welcome to this Tech Talk. So today we are going to talk about CPQ and how we can combine Configit ACE with your Salesforce CPQ system for an even stronger modeling and configuration experience. At first, I'm going to talk a little bit about the problem of accessing complex configuration models in Salesforce and why it is important, but also why it is a challenge. And then we will look a little bit more closely into Salesforce, why it is a great CRM tool, and how one of the new features called the custom configurator will allow you to bring your own configurator to Salesforce. And then after that, we will move over to Configit ACE and see a few examples of how we work with configuration data in ACE. And then once we have a good picture of how both Salesforce and Configit ACE work, then we will take a look at how these two systems work together. And then finally, we will end this Tech Talk with a run-through of a typical user journey to give an idea of how users might experience this type of integration. So let's get started. So selling complex products is something that has always been challenging. And when you sell multiple brands and different product lines in different markets, then each configuration will be unique and often requires in-depth knowledge to guide customers to the right choice. And there is a growing demand for customized and personalized products today. And if we take a car, for example, then not only are there hundreds or thousands of different options that must be configured, but there are also market-specific rules and regional differences. For example, a car that is sold in Australia probably does not come with heated seats as a standard option, but instead cars with cooled seats. But in Iceland, where I'm from, then all new cars, they have heated seats as standard option. And all these different rules, both the technical engineering rules and the commercial marketing rules, as well as the complex pricing rules, they all need to be satisfied when a product is being sold. And customers, they expect that sales reps have access to accurate, up-to-date information so that they can configure products and solutions that meet their specific needs. And then once that need is met, then providing a fast, accurate, and complete quote is critical to closing the deal. So in this Tech Talk, we are going to look at Salesforce and how you can make complex product configuration accessible from within Salesforce to allow sales reps to work more efficiently with complex configuration models in their CPQ system. And we'll also see how you can embed an external configurator in Salesforce and how that configurator can utilize a much more powerful configurator engine than the one that's already inside Salesforce. But before we look at how this type of integration works, then let's take a quick look at Salesforce. Salesforce is one of the leading providers of CRM solutions and has become the go-to software for sales professionals. And over the years, Salesforce has extended and enhanced its CRM offering to make it easier for sales professionals to do more directly from Salesforce, but at the same time staying ahead of new trends in the market. And a key sales trend that Salesforce supports is what we call the configure price quote or the CPQ sales process. And this process enables the sale of products that must be configured in order to meet specific customer needs. And pricing is based on the product configuration and options chosen, which can then only be quoted to customers once the configuration is complete and has been verified to be delivered. And the purpose of CPQ solutions is to automate the CPQ sales process so that all the information necessary to build a quotation and price the solution is readily available, including the ability to provide pre-approved discounts without the need of some lengthy approval process. So while the price and the quotation parts of the process are the ultimate desired outcome, then it is the actual configuration part that makes it all possible. And Salesforce supports the CPQ process with their Salesforce CPQ module, which is now considered the leading CPQ product on the market. And while this is a great CPQ product for many companies, then for manufacturers of complex products with thousands and sometimes even millions of product options and parameters, then a powerful product configurator is needed to not only manage all of these product configuration options, but also to provide a fast validation of a specific configuration. And this is why Salesforce is operating with a BYOC concept for Salesforce CPQ, which stands for Bring Your Own Configurator. And this makes it possible to integrate an external product configurator to Salesforce CPQ solutions that can provide more power and speed than the internal configurator in Salesforce CPQ. So let's see how this works. The user would typically start in Salesforce and create a quote. And then he will associate the quote to a customer and will then start to add products to the quote. Then when configuring the product, Salesforce will open a window with an external configurator. And then the user will configure the product in the external configurator. And then when he's done, he will transfer the configured product back to Salesforce by clicking a Save button. And then the configuration is stored back to Salesforce. And then the rest of the quotation process is continued in Salesforce as normally. For example, by adding accessories or other products to the quote. So now we have covered Salesforce, which is this blue box in this picture. But we still need to figure out how to build this external configurator. So if we zoom a little bit in on the green box on the picture, which in this case is Configit ACE, then we can start to focus on this question of how do you build an external configurator? And you basically start by creating a product model, and then you use an API to access that product model from an external system or a consuming application. And modeling is typically done by a user creating rules and product logic in the modeling environment, and perhaps importing data from external systems. And this is what you see here in this upper part of this green box. And then when the product model is ready to be used, it is compiled and published to a central data repository that can be accessed by the API. And this is what you see here on the lower part of this picture. And that's what we talk about as the ACE platform. And then these APIs are used to create an external configurator that can be called from Salesforce or some other systems. So let me give you a quick overview of how you work with modeling inside ACE. Here we have set up a product model for a hearing aid called iHear. And you can see here that the tool allows you to model the different configuration aspects of the product. And here on this screenshot, we have a list of features and families, which is Configit's terms for variables and values. And these are the choices that the user will select between when configuring the product. For example, highlighted there in the bottom, the color family, which has a list of colors that allows the user to specify what color he wants his hearing aid in. And here on the next slide, we see some of the rules that specify how to configure the product. And you can create both text rules and table rules. And here on this screenshot, you see a list of the rules for the hearing aid. And as an example, I've highlighted a rule that is linking the color variable with the product lines. And we'll get more into that in a little bit. But ACE also has a number of other unique features, such as versioning and collaboration, that makes modeling of your product a lot more easy and secure. But if we take a look at this specific rule that I highlighted before, then this simple table rule defines what colors are available for the different product lines. For example, the product line I here invisible is only available in the color transparent. And you will see this again in a moment when we get to the configurator. So you can keep an eye out for that when we open the configurator later on. But this is just an example to show you how easily you can work with rules inside ACE. And you might, of course, have much more complicated rules where some of them can still be represented by a table rule, but in some cases you might need some more advanced text rules to cover your use cases. So now we have covered this upper part of the green box, the modeling environment, and now we have moved down to the ACE platform. And here on this screen, you can see the data published on the platform, and each package in this list is a self-contained set of data that you can then use to create a configurator. And if we open up one of these packages and take a look at the content of it, we can see the iHere product that we worked on in the modeling environment, and we can see the different options in the panel to the right. And those are the options that we are going to use inside our configurator when we start working with the APIs and putting it in a front-end application. So now we have seen how to build a configuration model and make it accessible on the platform. And now we need to build the external configurator and hook it up to Salesforce. But I'm not going to go into details on how to work with the APIs to create this actual configurator, since that's out of scope for this tech talk. But instead, we will now look into how to integrate such a configurator with Salesforce. But if you are interested in learning more about our APIs and how to create an external configurator, then please reach out to our team and we will make sure that we get you in contact with the relevant people to help you get started. But let's move on to the integration part. So in order to set up the integration to an external configurator, like the one from ACE, you need to locate the installed Salesforce CPQ package under setup. And from within there, you can insert the URL of the external configurator, as you can see here on the screenshot. And then for each product that you would like to use this external configurator for, then you need to go to the product definition and make sure you have this externally configurable checkmark enabled, as you can see over here. And then once you have these two steps in place, then Salesforce will launch the external configurator when you add your externally configured product to your quote and when you start to configure it. And then the actual synchronization of master data between Salesforce and ACE is something that must be set up on per customer basis. So that's not something that we're going to go into details about here today, but that could, for example, be defining the configurable products in both systems, and then setting up the rules inside ACE and prices inside Salesforce. So here we see an example of a configurator that is running as a standalone web application. And this configurator is showing the product model we saw before in ACE, and it's then using the APIs on the platform to create this web application. And this is actually a public application that you can also find from our website at configit.com if you want to try it out. But now I want to use this as my external configurator in Salesforce. And then what I need to do is to take the URL of this website here and use that inside Salesforce as our external configurator. And then I put that down there. And then inside Salesforce, I've also marked my iHere invisible product as externally configured, which means that the external configurator is called when I configure this product on my quote inside Salesforce. And then this is how it looks like in an iframe inside Salesforce. And as you can see, this is exactly the same configurator as we had on the previous slide, but now it's just running in an iframe inside Salesforce instead of as a standalone web application. So now we have covered how you work with ACE and create a product model and an external configurator, and also how you hook that up with Salesforce. So now let's take a look at a typical user journey in a short demonstration. And I have pre-recorded a demo of a typical user journey that I would like to take you through. If I can get the video here up and running. So what you would typically do is that you start inside Salesforce on the quote and then hit the edit lines button there in order to take you to the quote lines, and hit add products. That takes you then here to the product catalog list with all the different products. And here we see the different product lines of the iHear product, all created as their own individual products. So each one of those products here in this list is an externally configurable product. And we're going to pick the iHear invisible product that we also saw before. And when we hit the select button up there in the top, it will launch the configurator. And then we can see the configurator inside Salesforce and start to do some options. I'm going to pick moderate here for the hearing loss. And then we continue over to some different options. And as you can see down here in the bottom, we have this color variable. So this is the rule that we talked about before, where you can see that we only have transparent for this iHear invisible product. And that's because of the table rule and how we set it up. Then we can continue through the configuration, do some different selections, and to the right, you can see a small bill of material being built up with all the different selections that we are making. And then we just continue. And here you will see that we have a lock on this power level 1. And that is also because of a rule. And here the configurator will give us some guidance on why that is. And we can see that's because we picked moderate from the hearing loss. But we're going to override that one because we really want our power level to be power level 1. And then we can continue. And then this external configurator has been designed so that when we are done, it will give us a summary of all the different options. And if we are happy with our configuration, and then we can click on this update selected features button there in the bottom, which is our save button. And that will then store the configuration back onto the line, and will populate all the different prices that are associated both with this header line, which is this iHear invisible, and then there are also some subcomponents that have their own price in this case. And this is of course dependent on how you have set your products and prices up in your environment. And this is how we have done it here for this demonstration. And then when we are happy with all the different quote lines, we don't want to add any more products, but of course we could also do that. But then we hit the save button, which will then store these quote lines back onto the quote. And you will see that up there that the quote lines have been updated from being 0 lines to these 4 lines that we just configured. And then of course you could also reconfigure if you want that. Now it has been stored, the configuration, and if you open one of these the iHear invisible line, then you can of course go back to the configurator and reconfigure it if you want to make some changes to it, and then save it back again. So this is basically how, from a user point of view, you would be working inside Salesforce, opening the configurator, and then working with your quotes as normally inside Salesforce. So with this demo, I think I will conclude my presentation of how to enhance your Salesforce CPQ with a powerful configurator. And now we have seen how you can use Salesforce CPQ with an external configurator, and how to integrate to Configit ACE for enhanced modeling experience, and a powerful configurator. And this will give you better support for complex configuration using the great CRM features of Salesforce, but together with an advanced CLM solution like Configit. So thank you very much for watching and joining the session.
Thank you.
I hope it has been useful. So I think I'll hand over to you now, Jörn, for some questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation, Sigrún. Very interesting. And indeed, we have some questions coming in. So we have some couple of minutes time for a short Q&A.
Yeah.
So the first question I have here on the list is, how would you work with this if you wanted to have different configurators?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So in the example that I showed now, we had like a generic configurator set up so that for all the different options and the products that you saw in the product catalog, you would open the same type of configurator. Of course, depending on the modeling that you have created behind the scene, then it might look slightly different, but the configurator is the same. But if you wanted to use different configurators, you would basically do it exactly the same. You would point to the URL of the external configurator, but instead of that external configurator then being a generic one that always gets opened every single time for all the different products, you instead would use that URL and external configurator as a landing page, which would then call out the relevant configurators. So then if you have some very specialized products that all need to have their own individual customized configurator, you would then get the product ID shipped to the external configurator or the landing page, which would then know which product you are selecting and then subsequently which configurator you should open up. And of course, you could have a mixture of also generic configurator that is maybe used for 80% of your products, and then for 20% of them, you would have some customized configurators. So that is all up to how your product portfolio is. So that's definitely something that can be set up as well.
That makes sense. Thanks for this enlightening answer. So the next question here that's popped up is, you can read that. You talked about this data sync between Salesforce and ACE. How can you make sure you work with the same data in both systems?
Yeah, so that's also another good question. So that depends a little bit on also the workflow that you have in your company. And of course, you could do that manually. You could make sure that the products that you're creating in Configit ACE are also the same as you have in Salesforce. But if you would like to automate that process, then the short answer would be that we use APIs. So we have great APIs in Configit ACE, and then Salesforce also have a good set of APIs. So then you could always use those APIs depending on also where you are mastering the data. So if you're mastering all your data inside Salesforce, you could use the ACE APIs to create automatically that same data. For example, if you create a product in Salesforce, then it will create that same product inside ACE, and then vice versa. And also you could also create some buttons inside Salesforce to customize that so that it would automatically create and do synchronization of the data between the two systems. So I think the short answer is that we do have some good set of APIs in Configit ACE that makes sure that we do have some good integrations to third-party systems like Salesforce.
Thank you. So I think the next question is more or less about your whole presentation. It refers to, is this standard Salesforce functionality, or do I need to buy an add-on?
Yeah, so the short answer is no, you don't need to buy anything. But of course, that depends on what systems you already have in place. So as such, the integration does not cost anything extra. So as long as you have Salesforce with the Salesforce CPQ module enabled, so that you have this custom configurator feature, and that you have Configit ACE, then there is no additional cost in getting these two systems to work together. We are using all standard functionality both on the Salesforce side and also on Configit ACE side. So there shouldn't be any additional cost in getting the integration to work together when you have all the other things in place. So there is no need to buy an app or any add-ons or anything like that.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So there's another question I have here on the list that says, how comfortable is the system having a larger part which is ETO, engineer to order? I think that's there's an example. I think text needs to be established to cover customer requests.
Yes, so that could of course then be set into the modeling environment, or you could have like a customized configurator if you have an ETO process, like I mentioned before, that if you have some customized configurators, if you have, for example, 80% of your products being standard and then you have 20% being ETO or engineer to order, then you might want to have a specialized configurator so that you can cover these different options that are required as a part of the ETO process. So then you could capture those in that configurator. So that could of course be one way, but I think there are different ways also in how you could do this. So that would be great to maybe take a closer look at the individual cases and figure out a solution that matches the individual needs.